Hello, Social Studies 8's online learning class. Um, just thought I'd put on some fill-in-the-blank notes for the lectures or lessons that we're going to go through. You'll start to notice as we go through each slide that all the words that you have to fill in for the fill-in-the-blank notes are underlined in red. And so as I kind of go through and read through kind of the notes that we made for this lesson on how did the Spanish conquer the Aztecs, then if you can just follow along, fill in the blanks. Of course, you can stop it and rewind at any time if there's words that you miss. I'll just continue from slide to slide as we go through the presentation. So first we're going to talk a little bit about what happened when the Aztec actually met the Spanish. So when Montezuma first heard of the Spanish landing at Veracruz, he sent emissaries with gifts of jewels and fine featherworks for the Spanish leader. In Aztec tradition, an individual who offered the richest gifts was more powerful than the one who received them. It meant that the person receiving the gifts should either submit to that power or depart. When Montezuma received word that Cortes had worn the sacred cloak, he believed this was an indication that Cortes was the returning Quetzalcoatl. But he wanted more proof. Montezuma sent food containing human blood as a test. A god would eat the food, Montezuma thought. Cortes refused to eat it, not because he knew there was human blood in the food, but because he feared being poisoned. Now, the Aztec messengers, when they described what the Spanish looked like when they first encountered them, this is a direct quote, reads, quote, "A thing like a ball of stone comes out of its entrails. It comes out shooting sparks and raining fire. The smoke that comes out with it has a pestilent odor. If it is aimed against a tree, it shatters the tree into splinters. This is the most unnatural sight. They dress in iron and wear iron casques on their heads. Their swords are iron, their bows are iron, their shields are iron, their spears are iron. Their deer carry them on their backs wherever they wish to go." Close quote. So as the Spanish started to come in and started to learn a little bit more about the Aztec, he started to learn some things. Cortes knew he could not defeat the Aztec with only 500 men, so he would have to use other strategies. He learned that many city-states disliked being dominated by the Aztec and wanted independence from them. In the 8 months it took him to travel from the east coast to Tenochtitlan, Cortes gathered allies by means of trickery and force. He often killed the nobility of a city to frighten its citizens into submission. Using the Tlaxcalans and the Cholulas. The Tlaxcalans were enemies of the Aztec and had never been conquered by them. They also did not want to be under Spanish rule. In the summer of 1519, they attacked the Spanish with Cortes, but Cortes held them off with guns and steel armor. The Tlaxcalans then decided it was in their best interest to make an alliance with the Spanish. The Spanish and the Tlaxcalans then attacked the Cholulas, which caused heavy losses among the Cholulas. The Cholulas then agreed to join with Cortes. Now, the first meeting between Cortes and Montezuma. Cortes sent messages saying that he was coming in peace and wished to meet with the emperor to extend his greetings. By now, Cortes had established a fearsome reputation and entered into the causeway to Tenochtitlan unopposed on November 8, 1519. When Montezuma finally greeted Cortes in Tenochtitlan, he addressed Cortes as if he were a god, unsure whether or not Cortes was Quetzalcoatl. There are records of this meeting of Cortes and Montezuma, and if you'd like to read page 308 and 309, it gives you the Florentine Codex of that first greeting. This little codex will help you in answering some of the questions that you will be required to give for page 310 to 312. Now, how did the battles for control of the empire unfold? The first one was the massacre of the unarmed Aztec. For the next 6 months, Cortes and his men remained in Tenochtitlan. Tensions between the Spanish and the Aztec increased. Cortes received a message that Velazquez, the Spanish governor of Cuba, had sent men to arrest him for disobeying his orders. Velazquez's men had reached Veracruz, and Cortes had to leave Tenochtitlan to stop them. He left Pedro de Alvarado in charge. The Aztec began preparations for the main annual festival, honoring the god Huitzilopochtli. Many nobles, priests, and warriors gathered at the courtyard of the main temple to dance at the celebration. Alvarado and his men surrounded the courtyard and massacred the unarmed worshippers. If you'd like, you can read page 210, The Massacre According to the Codex Aubin, to get more details about this battle, or unarmed battle. How the battles for the control of the empire unfolded continue. The next battle was Noche Triste, or Sorrowful Night. When Cortes returned to Tenochtitlan, he found his men trapped, but managed to reach the palace where they were staying. He ordered Montezuma to speak to his people to persuade them to let the Spanish return in peace. Montezuma was jeered and seriously hurt by stones hurled at him. He died a few days later. Cuitlahuac was elected, and the new Huitlatoni, Cuitlatwatch, continued the attack. In June 1520, the Spanish tried to escape from Tenochtitlan in the middle of the night to make their way to the coast, but the Aztec discovered them crossing the causeways and attacked. The Aztec attacked the Spanish from all sides, even from canoes in the water. Many of the Spanish were carrying stolen gold and could not move quickly because of the added weight. An unforeseen enemy. Cortes, the conquistadors, and the Tlaxcalan allies retreated to Tlaxcala for about 5 months to recover from their wounds. Meanwhile, the Aztec began dying from smallpox that had been brought by the Spanish to the New World. As much as half the city population of Tenochtitlan may have died from smallpox in those 5 months. Cuitlahuac, chosen after the death of Montezuma, died from the disease after being leader for only 80 days. There is a record, or a quote, The Broken Spears, the Aztec account of the conquest of Mexico, which reads, talking about the unforeseen enemy, or the smallpox. The illness was so dreadful that no one could walk or move. A great many died from this plague, and many died of hunger. They could not get up to search for food, and everyone else was too sick to care for them. Close quote. The final battle. After regrouping, Cortes returned to Tenochtitlan with his allies, the Tlaxcalans, as well as the warriors of Texcoco, who had once been members of the Triple Alliance. They now turned against the Aztec as they saw the strength of the Spanish. The Aztec had no allies to support them in this battle, and with almost half the population already dead from smallpox, defending against the Spanish became even more difficult. The Aztec in Tenochtitlan withstood the siege for 75 days. The Aztec Empire was crumbling. Cortes blocked the canals, the causeways, and the aqueducts, preventing food and water from reaching the city. Many of the citizens who had survived the plague died from hunger and contaminated drinking water. The last group of Aztecs surrendered on August 13, 1521. The Aztec Huitlatoni Cuauhtemoc was taken prisoner and hanged. The great Aztec Empire was no more.